The Sixth Doctor, Flip and Constance Clark return to the setting of the World Wars, as in today's Doctor Who Big Finish audio drama review, I'm going to be taking a look at the May 2020 release as a part of the main range, which is of course entitled Scorched Earth, as written by Chris Chapman. Now, in my previous Big Finish main range review of the Sixth Doctor story Cry of the Vulturess, I did of course state that due to current circumstances, the third and final release of the current 2020 Sixth Doctor trilogy, which is entitled The Lovecraft Invasion, as written by Robert Valentine, originally scheduled to be the June 2020 release, has sadly been hit by a number of production issues, meaning that that release has been delayed. And ultimately, of course, on this channel, I do review the main range as a part of the trilogies that they are released within. However, currently with that release being planned for the later half of summer, I have decided to depart from my initial format of reviewing within the trilogies, and in fact go back to the original format of Big Finish monthly range reviews, taking a look at each main range story individually. Due to the main range in fact ending in March 2021, this format might in fact remain up until the end of the series in early 2021. However, if Big Finish do return to the regular trilogy format that we have been used to for the past few years, I will no doubt revert back. The format for these reviews is simply just to ensure that there isn't too much delay. So naturally, if you haven't checked out my review of Cry of the Vulturess as of yet, please do so. I do believe it was uploaded either the same time as this review or a few days ago, and of course in the future I will be taking a look at the Lovecraft Invasion whenever that episode is released. However, for today's review we travel back to World War II for Scorched Earth. So now moving on to the second story of the trilogy, we have Scorched Earth, as written by Chris Chapman, and yes, I am wearing the same shirt, and yes, that TARDIS hasn't moved since the last review of Cry of the Vulturess. That is because, unusually with these reviews, I normally film them each month and put them all together at the very end. This time round it's a bit different because, of course, last month in May, I did of course have university exams and all of that, so I decided to in fact marathon the past two monthly range releases in one over the space of one day. So here we are reviewing them both together. How delightful. This episode once again has been produced, directed and script edited by John Ainsworth, and we do of course have the senior producer being David Richardson, and we have the same TARDIS team once again throughout the story. However, this time round all of the alien stuff is gone pretty much for this story, as we have an episode set within 1944 France, just after the World Wars, meaning that we return back to Earth with Constance Clark. And usually this will be an interesting concept to have in a Doctor Who story. It would be a normal one, however. It will be one of those ones that you wouldn't really give a second thought to. It's another World War Doctor Who adventure. However, again, this episode is entirely changed in its context due to the current TARDIS team that we have, because of course, as we've seen during Constance Clark's debut story, Criss Cross, of course, Constance Clark is a Wren working at Bletchley Park, and we have somebody who has been taken out of time and space in the middle of the World War, and now we have her landing in 1944 at the very end in France, and we have them essentially having parties on the streets because finally the Germans have been taken out of France. So it's a very brilliant story to again exercise the strengths of Miranda Rayson as Constance Clark. I think immediately as I was listening to part one, I had a very good feeling for this episode because we had some tensions being risen between the main characters. We have the Doctor wanting to take Constance Clark away immediately because he has put her directly back into her timeline just a few years into the future, and then we have Flip again being excited to be in another period, wanting to try out what's going on in this period and meet the different people. However, we soon find out that there is a few further clashes. We get to see somebody within this little French village basically being tortured essentially in the middle of the street because they believe that she did in fact work for the Germans and she was colluding with them, essentially telling them different things. Flip, being the all-good character that she is, believing that people should not be punished for something that A, can't be proven, and even if they are punished anyway, B, they should be punished in a way that doesn't involve torture. And because Constance Clark is from the period, we would normally have her of course come into the situation having rather similar beliefs to Flip, but of course Constance has came from the World Wars. She knows the Germans, she knows how much the Nazis are an enemy to her, and of course that's been embedded into her due to where she has came from, and because of that we see her taking on a rather different approach. We see her almost agreeing with the torture that is going on within the middle of the street to a character called Clementine. So again, we have this relationship being formed between Flip as well as Clementine, and throughout the story we have her trying to meet back up with her again and check if she's okay, showing the good character of Flip, also raising a few questionable actions of that of Constance Clark, which again, when listening to this story, normally you wouldn't be able to tell where the character is coming from, but because Constance has grew up within this harsh environment where the Nazis have rather rightfully been made the enemy and people who should be dealt with, you can see a rather negative and hostile side to her character coming out. And I think that it is an absolutely brilliant story that makes that tension. It kind of shows that when they go out into the universe and have all these different adventures, I feel like the TARDIS team and the Doctor may have a little bit of a sense of detachment. It's just another alien world, it's another society, and although they care that people along the way will be hurt, when we plummet into a story this time round that is fundamentally very, very personal to Constance Clark, we have her changing her beliefs ever so slightly. The very thought of the Nazis no doubt probably make her blood boil, and because of that we have her entire perspective being changed throughout this episode. And of course we have Colin Baker in there as well, trying to keep the peace between two of them, and we have almost this conflict between Flip and Constance throughout the entire story, which is gripping to see unfold all the way throughout, and it is a thoroughly enjoyable adventure for that concept alone. Of course, as the cover of this story suggests, we also have a theme of fire, and I think it will be no spoiler to say that that is the alien of the story. We have a fire that has came to Earth, and basically it has met a certain person on Earth, and essentially he has become the father to that fire, and he can tell the fire to go and torture and burn people, whoever he wants within the society, and it will go and do that. It will go and kill people. And we have the Doctor coming into this situation, instantly knowing that something isn't quite right, and we get to see this certain other person within the village targeting certain people, in particular people who were working alongside the Germans. So again, we have that link to Clementine within this episode, which makes for a wonderfully dramatic scene within the midpoint of this story that I'm not going to spoil, again highlighting the drama and threat of this time period, that although the war is over, there is still very much another war entirely going on within France, being between different people, and who do you trust, who do you believe, especially considering that the Germans are now out of France entirely pretty much. Of course the rest of the soldiers are going to fight the vast majority of the remaining German soldiers within Germany itself. This is one of those stories that uses heightened emotions to its advantage, because the main thing that the fire almost feeds off is those heightened emotions, and we have the Doctor using that at the end of this story to his advantage. We have him using the whole concept of anger and happiness and people's memories of coming together and truthfulness, and we also have him suggesting where the fire should go next, a planet of true evil where everybody hates each other, which made for a lovely reference, which I'm not going to spoil, but if you decide to listen to this episode yourself, it's a nice little Easter egg in there, which I think was definitely a welcome touch. There is also a great reference to the Doctor's past in there as well, when he is going around the different people within the plane, because yes, old 60 does indeed drive a World War Spitfire type-esque aircraft throughout this story, which I never quite expected to see him do, but it was once again a very cool and dramatic touch to his story. Him referring back to the time on Gallifrey, when he was a part of the Academy and going on to the Academy's roof to watch the sunset whilst cooking this Gallifreyan related piece of food. I thought again it was a nice little touch and something that you would kind of expect to see within new series Doctor Who today. Just a little sprinkling of the Doctor's past, which in theory doesn't reveal anything. It's just a little Easter egg in there that gives you an ever so slight glimpse into a period within the Doctor's past, which I don't think, or at least hope, that we never truly get to see play out on screen, because it is nice to have that mystery in there. I never normally do this throughout these Big Finish reviews anymore, but I am in fact going to reel off the entire cast, because this episode has a phenomenal cast. We have Christopher Bank as Walter, we have James Boswell as Harris and Klaus, we have Philip de Lacy as Lucien and Max, as well as Katrina Olsen as Clementine. And this story, as I say, is full of character, lots of different characters. Clementine is somebody who fell in love with a German soldier, and because of that she has been punished. We have Walter, who is a soldier, who basically always misses the battle, which is a running gag throughout this story. We have him going to help the Doctor and defeat the fire. However, he turns up once the fire is all gone and dusted, much like how when it came to D-Day, he in fact arrived a few days late. And again, he was about to go to Germany to help, of course, win the war at the very end and, of course, defeat Hitler. However, again, he was late. So that's a lovely running gag throughout this story. And Lucien, as well, as portrayed by Philip de Lacy, he's a character that is very much a victim of the corruption within the period, people not trusting each other, and because of that, he kind of falls into a mental state where he believes that other people should be killed because of their beliefs. And we have that learning curve throughout this story, which admittedly at the very end we kind of see him seeing sense within his actions and his flaws, which would have maybe benefited the story to see a little bit further exposure to that. However, at the same time, I think we got enough to understand where the character was coming from, and more importantly, make him feel real. The story also concludes with Flip and Constance Clark, also referred to as Connie, having a little bit of a heart-to-heart as the Doctor goes to clean the windows on the TARDIS as he's parked it in the middle of a field right next to a cowpat, as Flip says at the very start of the story. I wasn't particularly impressed by. She basically has a great moment between her and Connie. I think that their relationship throughout this episode is challenged, I think more so than it has been throughout all of the adventures so far, and I think it would be no spoiler to say that both of them move on at the end of the episode. They kind of see and accept where both of them are coming from as characters, although their opinions are entirely different. And we get to see Connie having a few moments throughout the episode where she kind of moves in her beliefs. She understands deep down that torture of these people is wrong. However, there is still that hatred inside her that is growing, understandably. And again, we have Flip having that all good side of her character coming out. I think that little scene at the very end is the icing on the cake when it comes to this story. Each part contributes to the story overall. The narrative itself is juicy and has lots of substance, and again, if you're a fan of period Doctor Who, or in particular Doctor Who themed stories that are set within the World Wars, this is an episode that I highly recommend purchasing. In fact, I tweeted just after finishing listening to this episode, and I had a very, very good feeling when watching this episode, and at the very end, that belief was almost solidified. Sometimes you have a good feeling within Big Finish audio dramas, and then as the story plays out, you kind of like the episode. However, it may lose some of its impact. However, all four parts of this story kept me engaged, and as it came to the closing scene, I finished the episode as the titles started to roll and thought, this is going to be one that I think people are going to look back on, because the monthly range is such a massive expanse of Doctor Who adventures where it is very easy to forget certain adventures exist simply because the catalogue is that massive. And I think that this is one of those stories that is going to stick out in Doctor Who fans' hearts as being one that should definitely be experienced, and I hope so, because I think Chris Chapman has done a very good job. The TARDIS team is absolutely incredible. Credit all round to Colin Baker, Lisa Greenwood, and of course Miranda Rayson. I can't wait to see where this series takes us next. Of course we have the Lovecraft invasion. But thank you very much for watching this review. I hope you have enjoyed it, as I mentioned at the very beginning of this video. If you haven't checked out my review of Cry of the Vulturess as of yet, please do so, because it is of course a part of this trilogy. I do of course stay tuned on the Host Productions for brand new Doctor Who content each and every week, and of course do also stay tuned in the next few months for a review of the Lovecraft invasion whenever that episode is released, to of course complete the 6th Doctor, Flip and Constance Clark trilogy for 2020. So thank you very much for watching, stay safe, and I shall see you all next time. Bye for now.